and Khalid took a video and it went viral, and I was like, oh my god, this could be it. And I was standing behind him, like I watched, like I'm like you're me, this is Khalid, and I was watching him take the video, and then I saw it go on Twitter. I was like, oh, we got one. I was like, oh, we got one.
Welcome back to the XLNT Show. We are Excellent Sound, and we are joined by a Latin Grammy winning, Grammy nominated, okay, two giant projects of Nitti and Sidepiece that are very, very successful. Super, super happy to have you here, ladies and gentlemen, Nitti. Let's jump right into it. I think we've only had one person that is a Grammy winner on our podcast so far?
Yes.
You won a fucking Grammy, bro.
I did.
I did. So, like, what did that feel like? Like, or even so you won a Latin Grammy and you're also nominated.
Yeah. So the technical Grammy that I won, I was a part of the Bad Bunny album, and it's like. That was, I think I was on my way to Asia or something. I just like found out and I was like, whoa. And it was like the craziest moment finding out about it first. Like that was the moment that actually felt the craziest.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for that one, like because it was an album, only Tiny got the actual award and Bad Bunny because it's like executive producer and the artist and then a few other people get it. So as a producer with like me or Diplo, who we produced the song,
right.
We both didn't get that actual like Grammy.
Oh, it doesn't work like that.
So
huh?
yeah, because it was an album, but I technically won Latin Album of the Year and have like the little like medal and the certificate and thing. And then the Sidepiece one, we could have won the Grammy because I'm the artist. I'm part of Sidepiece. So me, Wes, and Dylan would have all won one.
Right.
But we lost to K Tronada. Rightfully so, incredible artist, but. That was the one that we could have actually, like, the second one was, like, more, like, devastating because I was like, oh, man, I actually could have had the actual Grammy.
Did you?
But, I don't care.
Did you go? Were you there?
Yeah, that was the COVID one, so.
Oh, okay.
I got really lucky. I had this, like, crazy, like, Grammy streak where I got nominated, like, 3 years in a row or, like,
Jesus
3 or 4 years in a row.
Bro.
Mainly because I work with Diplo. Like, he's just a really well-rounded guy with, like, the Grammys and stuff. And every time I did a record with Marshmello. Oh, actually, I had two in this is a super crazy year. It was like Diplo album, Marshmello album. I was part of both of those as producer. Actually, one of them, the Marshmello one, as an artist because all the people on that, which was really sick. And then both. So I was like, oh, 2 out of 5. I have a really high chance of winning.
Yeah.
And then like Rufus won, and I was like, yeah, there's no way we weren't gonna win that one. So
I do have a question for you. So you're kind of like a unique producer in a way where You do EDM, you do pop, you do like R&B, you do Latin music. You know, do you get angry when the dance album of the year goes to somebody who's not really an EDM artist or a dance artist?
I mean, so that I have the perfect. I know exactly what you're talking about. I was there at that Grammy. I was nominated that year too, and so like I already knew that was gonna happen because at the Grammys they were like, oh, we're gonna save the dance thing for later, and was like, and if Beyonce wins, it'll be her thing. I was like, this is set up. Like this is like,
you knew right away.
Yeah, because they said it before they like. I guess they air that part, but like because I was there, like I was like immediately, I was like, oh, there's no way if they're airing it later. It's because Beyonce's gonna win. They don't care about dance music.
It feels so weird.
Yeah, it was rough, but I mean, I will say like the one good thing out of it is that now they've created 2 categories. So like. Dance pop and then dance electronic.
Oh, that makes sense.
That helps.
That's way cooler.
So, because like then you get the Guettas and the Tiestos and no shame, shade at all. Literally, love those guys. They deserve their own. It's pop dance. That's where they belong. That they love it.
Right.
Let them live there.
Yeah.
Everybody else has their own thing, and now Aphex Twin isn't going up against David Guetta. You know what I mean? It's like that's the weirdest thing to have like Flume go up against Tiesto. It's like it just doesn't make sense. So it's like I'm just happy that like they're noticing and whatever. It's like it's just an award at the end of the day. So like being a part of it is cool, and I got to like be there and see it. But yeah, it's a little bit nerve-wracking.
So going back to this kind of like realm of like EDM and pop music,
yeah.
Did you start producing in the pop world before EDM? Because you have this like very unique area in the scene, I feel like, where you work with very large pop artists that are like way outside of EDM, you know? Like, how did that come about?
I think I started originally just trying to like be a producer. Like I kind of started as doing everything in a sense, where like I remember my first couple placements were like Pitbull and Enrique Iglesias. I worked with like DJ Mustard in that era.
Sick.
Really random stuff. So I kind of was from the beginning. And then in the meantime, I was like, oh, like dance music is really like taking off and more towards my direction, which is like from the rock and the metal and the heavy stuff. So I was like, oh, I actually really like this. Actually, I'd say melodic as well. Like 7 Lines was like my idol. Like when I first like started coming up, I was like melodic stuff because I feel that I'm better at melodies than just straight up heavy stuff sometimes. So like I kind of started there while doing this mumble jumble of everything, and it just like each one leveled up like together where I'd like get a big placement and then my Nitti stuff started taking off, and then big placement and Sidepiece starts taking off, and then big like try to like continue all of them at the same time. So it's like honestly from the beginning of my career it's been try and get, you know, records placed with other artists and also try and build my artist career, which is I guess
that's a lot of work.
It's a lot, yeah. It's like
is.
it's tiring. I'm feeling it now. Like I'm like in the moment. I had to like come back into my zen and like, you know, reboot and stuff. But I've tried to always do that, I guess, from the beginning.
Nice. And did you ever get worried about like what your image is or like your brand?
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
staying in your lane or whatever.
Absolutely. I struggle with that. Like to this day, like it's definitely the most difficult part about doing that is that sometimes, you know, grass is greener. You're like, well, look at, you know, Murata and Sudden Death, they're perfectly in their one lane and they live there and people love them and stuff like that. But then at the same time, it's like I can look back and be like, well, I've at least had this style and this setup where it's like, oh, I've produced for all these people and learned how to make different culture, you know, music and stuff. Like there's so many like ways to look at it. But I am currently in a like cool spot where I'm like, oh, I actually do want to specifically focus on a couple, like basically 2 lanes, my Nitti and my Sidepiece stuff. Like I'm really excited to actually, you know, focus on that. And as I do that, maybe, you know, reel back a little bit less of the placement and doing everything.
Right.
Because I did that for 10 years pretty much, where it was like, it's just grind, like do everything. Somebody says something, yes, I'll do it. Yes, remix, yes. And it was just like, yes. And now I'm just like realizing, I'm getting older. I'm trying to like enjoy my life and do, you know, buy a watch and take time to enjoy things. So it's like finding a nice balance of like working hard but not missing out on enjoying life. Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm at with like I'm flipping towards like, I'm really enjoying being in a lane, and Sidepiece is one thing and now Nitty's one thing. And
we really, really appreciate the fact of people that are able to produce in multiple genres. And we're always like telling our people, like when we're doing our remakes or whatever, it's like we're trying to remake like every genre. Like I want to be a badass producer in everything. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to be able to produce when I'm fucking 80 years old.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that's really, really cool that you have sort of set up this this sort of world for yourself to be able to work in different things and explore these different projects and not really put yourself in a lane. You can put your certain projects in a lane. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I think what's really cool too is what we're really excited about is that you're doing a lot more instrumentation in your Nitty Gritty project.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I really wanted to talk about that too. So did you?
My favorite topic.
Yeah,
yes, dude.
Yeah. So we're very much like you. We grew up in bands and like playing music and stuff. But I don't know. Did you grow up playing a specific type of instrument?
Yeah, drums was my first instrument. There's probably like a couple small questions you'll have about this, so I'm gonna open up the can of worms.
Nice.
I was a missionary kid. I grew up in the church. Was in Haiti, but I learned like all the worship music and all this stuff, and I played drums mostly. And
Sick.
then I tried piano and then guitar and stuff. And then naturally I was like, oh, I also love Slipknot and Suicide Silence. Like doesn't make any sense, but
go,
you know, like
dude.
I went there. So it was just kind of this infatuation, I guess, with learning it makes sense why I like melodic music, probably because it's like growing up playing worship music. It's like actually some of the like there's really good chords and melodies in worship music that carry
Incredible
over
chords.
into like some this isn't even a shade at all, but like Said the Sky and Millennium to me sometimes I'm like,
It's worship
is this
EDM.
worship music? Like
it
am I
totally
crazy?
is,
Not in
for
a bad
real.
way, because I literally grew up listening and playing all that, and I love like 7 Lines and stuff like that, and I laugh to myself all the time because I grew up playing it. So like definitely some of my melodies and like when I do probably why I love future bass and melodic dubstep is because those melodies are so worship music ish that it like reminds me of those. So those are the instruments that like the band instruments that I lean toward. And then with the heavy music and hip hop and stuff, I was like, oh, how do you balance all these genres? And it's like producer. That's the one guy in the middle of all of it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's kind of what led me towards it. But yeah.
That's awesome.
So what's top 3 bands?
I mean, you guys see, like I have the brand new, like
He's got
you know,
Deja.
I got Deja, yeah.
No,
So
dude.
Let's
you
go.
know, that's right there. But ironically, I feel like they've slipped down from my reigning top 3 recently because I just love Slipknot so much. I've just caught myself every can I
You
curse?
can cuss
Sorry.
as you want, yeah.
Every fucking time I work out these days, I literally just put a new Slipknot album. I'm like, wow, I'm like re-falling in love with them. I think probably Taking Back Sunday is another all-time favorite. And I have to say Coldplay. I'm not
Coldplay's amazing.
probably going back to like the worship music
Insane
like I don't know why.
melodies.
It's just like, bro, that like Chris Martin, like that's my I'd say like Death Cab is a nice runner-up, and Census Fail. I love Census Fail, like post-hardcore stuff like
Hell
that.
yeah.
It's tough. There's so many, but like I would say honestly my top 3 is like it hits all my soft would be Coldplay, the heavy would be Slipknot, and then like the emo shit would be like Taking Back. And it's like kind of my main favorite.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
man.
Dude,
Yeah.
how like I grew up very similar to you. I grew up in the church.
Yeah.
I grew up playing guitar in worship bands.
Let's go.
Right? So like, and then it's funny because like, and I know you also, but you grew up Jewish, but you also played in there's Jewish worship bands too, right?
Yeah. I played
And-
the drums in my worship
Yeah,
band.
the same bands that you're like mentioning. Isn't it interesting how like all 3 of us also have like specific connections to them, but we also have similar sort of background. So it's like, how did that happen to where we all kind of fell into the
They had us in a chokehold, man. Those
Yeah.
bands, they were like,
Yep.
let's target the young Christian
the,
youth.
the Christian kids, the church kids?
They got us.
And you know, with the new stuff that you're doing, you're incorporating more live instrumentation. So like, what can you tell us about what you got coming up as far as like how you're trying to incorporate those into what you're doing with the Nitti project?
Yeah, so I mean, coming from where we were before, I was talking about how like I'm excited to dive more into like a singular lane, and you know, now you've heard the bands that I love. Like, I just this year was like, man, I really actually want to pursue a single kind of lane, single kind of area, and I love that like post-hardcore / metal core. I won't say like sudden death or something, but probably like a Keizo, I'd say, is maybe the most similar because he has enough emo that I can relate to it, where it's not just metal or not just fucking the heaviest shit ever, which I still love. But I kind of wanted this balance of like, I love writing songs. I feel like it's not like tooting my own horn. I don't want to like play it down. Like I honestly feel like I'm a great songwriter versus just, you know, someone like Company or like Kyle, those guys, they can just produce the craziest sounds all the time. Me, it's like I kind of struggle more with that, but then the songwriting and the chords and the lyrics, and I'm not the best at it, but I feel like for the space I'm in, I'm one of the more songwriter styled producers. So like that's kind of what I'm trying to dive into.
Nice.
And write a lot of those like, you know, guitar riffs and the drum parts. Honestly, most of them are MIDI, but like, you know how it is when you play drums, you can write better drum MIDI.
Totally.
So like my drums sound super real just because I spent the time, I know how to play the drums and blah blah blah. Whereas a guitar I'm playing and, you know, working with a bunch of vocalists, but like honestly half the songs I wrote like myself or with another writer and then sent them to a singer. So it's like I'd say like trying to really mix good songwriting but also still have enough. I don't want to go so live that it's like it's not electronic music anymore. So I'm in the middle of like balancing that. I have a few records that are finished that I love, I think are very balanced. And then I have a million like ones that are too far this way too, and I'm trying to like bring them into this like perfect me version of this lane. But I'd say, you know, it's pretty comparable to like a Keizo or something like that. And
cool.
That's probably the lane that I'm, you know, excited about.
Do you see yourself with like a live drummer and like
I
guitar
think
players
eventually,
on stage?
but I actually love DJing. Like it's funny because it's like I want to do that, but I want to do it right. So it's like just half-assing it feels kind of like lame to me, where it's like, and I'm not throwing shade at anyone that does this, but like when you just have a crash cymbal and a drum pad up there,
Dude, that is
I
the
can't. I
worst.
just can't do that for me. You know, if that's you, no problem. But like, I can't get behind that shit for me. It's like I can want to have a full drum set. I want to have the singer there, or a full guitar setup, and have the CDJs there and do it properly, So
Yeah.
that's what I'm waiting for.
So, like, are you? How far out do you think you are to where people will be able to start hearing this?
I mean, so a lot of the remixes I've been doing are pretty much in the lane. Like, what started this whole idea is like, I started just like, I used to just do trendy remixes because it works.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
And some of the songs I liked, obviously, like some of them I genuinely, it's a trending song and I like it. Great. Best of both worlds. And some of them I just do it to do it. So now I'm kind of like, I realized, I really love new metal. Let me do this Linkin Park song, right? And then it works because obviously it's a huge song. And then, I love Slipknot. Let me do a Slipknot song. And started like working. And I was like, this is interesting. I'm doing what I feel is right and it's working. Like I forgot that you can just do something you love. And if you love it enough, and you do it well enough, people will actually like it. You don't have to just stick on to every trend and stuff. So I was at this weird like middle ground kind of like fighting the TikTok era, just do it to do it. And now I'm kind of back to do less but do it well and do what I love. And that's kind of what sparked. I was like, man, I love this music. I feel like people are actually like enjoying it. It's like I don't know if it's specifically the timing or if just not as many people were really doing it, or I don't know what the thing was, but my most viral things recently have just been out of nowhere old new metal songs and rock stuff. And so like because I love it so much and I know how to write that stuff, I was like, I think I can do the best fusion of this, possible. And that's what really like set it off. And it got me excited.
Dude, that's not a surprise to me.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Danny. Like we talk about this all the time. What me and Danny think is cool is gonna be cool.
Yeah.
And it's just like whatever you think is cool at that moment, like people are gonna see that and they're gonna relate
Yeah,
to
if
that.
you're excited too, I think what it is when you genuinely can get behind something, people just crave like genuine. What's that?
Genuinity.
Genuinity.
Ingenuity.
No. I think it's authenticity. That's what it is.
Wow, that's
Nice.
clip that one.
Yeah. Nailed it.
Me being an idiot. I feel like people crave. You know why? Because you can tell usually by yourself. I crave that. So
Right.
obviously other people do. So like
Yeah.
I wanted it from myself. It made sense why when people see it, I'm like, I wanted this for myself so badly. Of course, other people are probably gonna see it and care about it more. So
isn't it crazy to think about that too? Like, as producers, it's like, especially when you're doing it, like I think on a professional level, you're constantly being like, I don't know how people are gonna receive this. Like, I already have a lane, and they might not dig that. And it's so funny to see that there's like this universal law where it's like, you know what? I like metalcore, and I want to do a metalcore song, and I'm gonna put it out, and I'm gonna try to make it influence with the current stuff I'm doing. It's like it's gonna be successful. It's this weird sort of just rule of the universe where as long as you're like legitimately trying to do something that you're interested in, chances are everybody else is. You and I and him all have the same interests, right? So I know that if you put out something, and because you're obviously a very capable producer, I'm most likely gonna like it because of all the same influences that we have. It's not like we're like somebody that's into this like avant-garde. We grew up on like, shit that nobody really listens to. You know?
This is a great segue into Sidepiece.
Yes.
Love it.
So like what made you want to put all of that music under a different alias? Was there a specific reason for that, or was it just the collaboration between you and Party Favor?
So originally, there was like a couple house. So the initial idea I had for this kind of idea, it wasn't like Sidepiece at the time. It was just an idea that I had separately on my own, and I was like, my birthday 2018 or something like that, and I was like, I want to go to Orlando because like I'm from South Florida, so I was like, Orlando's like a fun spot to like throw a birthday party, and my boys there were like, let's just do something fun. I was like, let me do like a house set or something random, and I was just like, I think Fisher era, like that kind of Chris Lake Fisher was like starting to really like bubble up, and maybe a little before. I can't remember exactly because I don't want to be like, as before it, because it might have been the same time. So it's like, whatever. I played this like house set, and I just had this competitive mindset of like, I love producing right before a show. It's the weirdest thing. My greatest ideas are 90% right before a show. I'm like, gotta make a crazy song or edit or something, like knock it out. And we have a song called Acrobatic, and the first song, like vocal, is me on an iPhone in 2018, just being like, bitch get acrobatic, made that freak get, and I just like did it, and it was an old shitty version, but the vibe was dope, and I was like, I was so excited. I was like, yo, I made this crazy house song. This is sick, bro. Like, and I'd made house before that, but like that was like more proper, not just like, I don't know. It was a little more like real house music sounding, and I got super excited, and I was like, bro, I need a fucking side project. This is crazy. Just had that idea for like maybe, a year. Turns out I had that and maybe one or two others. Went to a writing camp with Diplo in Bali. We started the first version of On My Mind. So it's like 4 proper house songs just sitting there. I'm like, this is fucking weird. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Party Favor DMs me. He's like, yo, I would love to collab on some Nitti Party Favor shit. And we just somehow get in like an hour conversation talking about house music. I was like, yo, I always had this funny idea to make a project and just call it Side Project as a joke.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, it's a great name, Sidepiece. And I was like, damn, that's really sick. And then he actually also had like 3 or 4 house songs, same thing. And it was like we just had like fucking, I don't want to say 10, but we had like 6 of the Sidepiece songs together done without realizing it. And then when we talked, and obviously we redid versions and fixed them up, but like literally the first 5 Sidepiece songs that came out, or somewhere around that, were actually already made on either end, and we just combined it and realized like, oh, we had the same vision. So it was like this really cool thing where it wasn't like we just like had the idea, did it, and then made the music. It was like the music connected us. Like it was this really interesting thing where like Temptation, I remember he showed me his demo of one of our songs that came out, Temptation. I showed him like Acrobatic, and then we told the idea to Diplo, and because originally he was just gonna put out On My Mind alone, and I was like, yo, I actually have this project. I think this might work for this. We're only going to do house. It's going to make sense, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay, yeah, cool. Then I don't want to do it like with Nitti or something, because it was like, that's too bass and whatever. Yeah. But then for the Sidepiece idea, he was like, yeah, I'm down. That makes sense. And so it was just this weird thing where it really, it made so much sense. And it was like, our love for house music, especially me and Dylan, he said he always used to like open up and play house music. So he had this long-standing relationship with it. Me, when I grew up in Haiti, like French culture, because it's a French colonized island, like it's called like tectonic. I don't remember if you remember, like before shuffling there was this like this kind of like funny we'll have to look it up, like tectonic, but it's like this funny dancing, and I used to like do that as a kid. It was like kind of like infinity area, like close your eyes and you will see infinite. Like that kind of house.
Was it like those like gothic kids under the
it wasn't as like
you talk about that dance.
It wasn't as like hardcore. It was like this like, I don't know, this like more electro funky version of it. It wasn't like anything hard, but it's like that turned into like what's the Fisher rework? Like I remember when that song came out originally.
Oh, the Around the World. Or Hold On.
World Hold On. I remember the original came out, and that was a smash in Haiti.
It was huge.
That was like all Caribbean cultures loved that style, because Europe loved that type of house.
Yeah.
And that's the original like house music that I was always like, one day I want to come back to this. So it's like, it's just such an interesting, like that was the first music I was exposed to, but then obviously because of heavy bands and stuff, I like went more into like the heavy lane. But I really secretly did have this love for like house music, because I just never got to explore it, because I was too late. I was too young when Calvin Harris was doing this and fist pumping. I was like, I missed that ride, so let me do the stuff that's more like my band and trap and this and that. So it was like a nice like offering on a plate. It was like, oh, here's this, you never got to experience the first wave of house, here's the second one.
Wow.
That's kind of how it felt to me.
It feels like it was like meant to be.
Yeah. 2006 was wild, because there was
Yeah.
so much good metal
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
rock coming out.
Yeah.
And then World Hold On came out. Do you remember that like Body Rocks song? It was like Body Rocks and Luciana.
Yeah, Luciana. Yeah.
That was like a huge
Yeah.
hit back then too.
And like the Benny Benassi, I remember like Disco Fries, or like somebody on, what's that? Like, This Song Is Sick. Like, I lived on that website, and that's where I'd find all these, like, 2007, 8, 2009, that era really inspired me. And it was a little more electro house, I'll say, but that was, like, a big thing where I was like, Deadmau5, and then when Skrillex came out, it was a rap. I was like, oh, this is me.
Yep.
I was like, yep.
It was over.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy how he just was? I look at him like Nirvana.
Yeah.
Like, he's like the Nirvana for, like, EDM. All of us like band kids were like, oh, like maybe like
relate.
I don't have to be in a van with 5 dudes.
Yeah, I
like
can
maybe
relate.
I can make my own music like this and still get that sort of aggressive sound out that we wanted.
Yeah.
By the way, I think like best best name of all time for a side project is Sidepiece.
Yes.
There's hands down.
You can't get better than that.
What an amazing fucking. I love the idea that you wanted to call it side project too. Also,
no,
like,
it's so much better though. Sidepiece is so much better. Yeah,
it's so good on so many levels.
Yeah.
Like I just have a very very big appreciation for that name.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it feels like such a crazy, looking back from that moment, and I can like picture being on the phone in my old studio, like kind of like similar to this, where I was just like hanging out, I don't even remember exactly like what I was working on. It's hard to remember what Nitti stuff was going on or what was going on, and just not realizing like, oh, this was a monster like ready to be made. It's like such an interesting thing to think about.
That's so cool, man. I'd heard too. I'm curious about working with his name's Dylan, right?
Yeah.
So I had a friend that was in the twonk era, where he was like, and I when they had put together their label or whatever, he was like an artist that was on there. He was one of my best friends, and he had worked with Dylan a lot. And what I thought was interesting, and I've never personally met Dylan, but I'm just curious, somebody who works with him.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard that he is just all audio. Like every bit of his sound design is always audio. Like that's kind of the way he was describing it to me. So I'm curious if that's true, and two, what it's like working with him and sort of your style of production and his style of production.
We're honestly, even I'm a good amount. I'd say I'm 70% audio personally too.
Wow.
So you're a sound designer, like you'll sound design audio to create weird shit.
I think more in the beginning. I mean, to answer your question, we both on Sidepiece will spend time like sound designing the opposite of what I do in bass music. So like the other day we had this track with Dombresky, and he sat there on like, I forget what remake of like a Prophet, and we were trying to combine this serum patch and this Prophet to make it sound like this old school, perfect blended new school thing. And we spent like 30 minutes, 45 minutes just trying to make this like saw pad, versus like we weren't like making some like a crazy sound. It was like we were trying to make a very basic sound timeless.
Yeah.
And like that's where we would spend our time sound designing. But like a lot of like the weird, which there isn't many, but I'd say the majority of like the sound designy stuff is, we find, I guess it's 50-50. Some of the leads I feel like we kind of stumble upon. That's more my method. I'm a stumbler.
Nice.
Yes.
I don't just sit there. I will say I kind of sit there and make risers in house music. I love sitting there making like weird shit like that. It's like doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, I'd say we honestly, both of us are pretty much, especially for house music, it's so much more about the drums most of the time that we spend a lot of time getting bass lines sound designed.
Yeah.
And then, making sure that the groove and the timing of the bass not just being on grid. Like with Dombresky the other day, we were like spending literally the half the day on, is the groove of the bass line right? So it's like such a different,
so important.
It's just so different than like my bass music, where like I'm sure we'll open it up later, but I'm layering like a million samples plus a sub bass plus and it's just so much more, which I love it, but it's so vastly different to how I look at. I'm trying to use as little as possible most of the time, and then I don't know, it's just like such a different thing to think about and like separate. But yeah, like both of us are much more sample based in house music, because getting like a shaker loop to have the right, moving it over 1/16 so on a triplet is more important than being like, oh, I made the formant back with the cut off, which that is important. I guess on a bass line we literally use a formant to make some of the tones better, but where usually the groove is so much more important on house music.
So I gotta ask this question. This is super important because me and Danny, we go off the deep end sometimes.
Love it.
When we're making house music, when do you know when that bass line is the bass line?
Yeah. Good question.
Because me and Danny will come up with like 30 bass lines.
Bro, it's live. I'll tell you the secret.
30.
I'll tell you the secret. It's literally, we learn this tour especially, and we've been touring like nonstop for like 3 to 4 years. If you go play a show and if the crowd is actually like paying attention, and you have to be honest with yourself, because sometimes we made the mistake of putting a house song and a big vocal on top of it. That's cheating. It's gonna go off most of the time.
Okay.
So if that's the only thing making it go off, you can't trust your track. Okay. You have to make sure that you make an original sometimes, and you can make your own vocal. Like, I'm not saying not to like remix. We do a shit ton of remixes.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying not to do that, but I'm just saying, don't distract yourself from like, oh yeah, this is the perfect baseline thing if you just put like, the perfect like Drake song on top of it, because then it's like not the same. Whereas sometimes we have songs where like we realize they go off because the groove is right, and it's like I don't know how to tell all the time. It's hard. You can think but you don't most of the time until you feel it as like a whole, as a crowd. Like the group decides. I don't know how to explain that.
Interesting.
But the group decides in house music, I'd say most of the time, when you're like, yo, everyone's fucking moving to this right now. We got it right.
So you guys are testing different bass lines all the time.
We don't really change the bass lines, I'd say, all the time, but we just change like if something's a little bit off, yeah, we'll tweak it. But if it's like that didn't work, fuck that song.
Wow.
Not playing it again.
It's gone.
And maybe not after one show, but if we play like a weekend, like we tested this song Energy, actually I keep talking about because we were so excited about, but this Don Bresky record we just worked on. We just been playing it all weekend, and it's felt right. Like we're like, yo, we got it right. A couple little things, but like people are moving to it, and that's to me is the best way. And it's like sucks because a lot of people don't have the opportunity to test things live, but in your own way, if it's if I'm talking like smaller producers, like even in a group of 10 people, or if you're playing a small show, you can still the group decide. I don't know. It keeps coming to me like the group decides. Like, that's the most house music shit.
That's
probably for dubstep too, bro. You can tell like I'm sure when Ray Volpe saw fucking Laser Beam played out, he realized live, oh, this is a hit.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I remember he sent it to me, and he wasn't playing EDC that year, and I played it with Wookie, and I was like, yo, this shit's crazy, bro. He's like, dude, everyone live has been going crazy for it. I'm like, it's because live. So I guess it almost applies to every genre, but...
Dude, he had that follow-up song, too. I don't know if it's out yet, but the one where he's chanting.
Yeah.
It's like, ba-da-da, and then he drops it.
Yeah.
It's like crowd control.
Yeah. Works every time.
It's insane.
So it's like, that's kind of... I'm sure there's other ways. I just found that has worked for us in Sidepiece, has worked the best when we know. Because I remember it happened with On My Mind. Like, I had this video. I was like Diplo played it at Coachella 3 or 4 years ago, and I was right behind Khalid, and Khalid took a video and it went viral, and I was like, oh my god, this could be it. And I was standing behind him, like I watched, like I'm like you're me, this is Khalid, and I was watching him take the video, and then I saw it go on Twitter. I was like, it's like, well, we got one. I was like, oh, we got one. If he notices, and nobody knew the vocal at that time, like it wasn't like some like no, it's like an old hit. It's not like many people didn't know. I know some people know it, but most people didn't know that vocal. So I'm like, yo, if this kid is taking this out and filming it, that's the crowd decides, man.
I looked up the song after I heard it for the first time. I was like, whoa, this is such a killer find. Yeah. Like, it was awesome.
That's his goal there. As much as people want to, you could say it about a lot of people. Like DJ Khaled does, similar things where people are like, what the fuck does this guy even do? Or like, what does Diplo do? And like, there's a lot of people that understand, and there's a lot of people that don't. And to like set the record straight, even I enjoy doing this sometimes, where you're executive producing and you're finding pieces of a song that need to be in the song, and then letting someone else put them together.
Right.
And it's like both of those things are important, because there's a lot of those technical producers that don't have the mind to think of things. It's basically taste.
It's like Rick Rubin.
Curation.
Exactly. Taste and curation is so important, and having both is the golden ticket. But
so I think about Diplo, bringing up Diplo in this sense, like you've heard rumors like, oh, Diplo doesn't, whatever.
Yeah, what does he do?
What does Diplo do? Or he's just, he's the businessman, right? And it's like, no, I think if you've been producing long enough, you know that the guy obviously has a very, very good ear. He has a very eclectic taste. He knows what's going to work.
Yeah.
He has really good ideas. I mean, the whole Justin Bieber, Jack U thing happened because that was his idea. Sonny was like, no. So I'm curious for you. You're coming up as a producer. You're getting some success with Nitty Gritty, right? You're getting a couple placements, right? What was it like when you got in a room to sit down with Wes Diplo and work with him for the first time? Were your nerves like out of control? Were you feeling like I can imagine, like if I sat down, if Diplo came in, even though like I know that I can produce and I would do a good job.
Yeah.
That feeling of having somebody like that, of that sort of like caliber, sit down and working with them. Did you feel any nerves, or were you like, I got this, I know what I'm doing?
No, definitely. I was nervous in a lot of sessions in the beginning, because the thing with him is like, it's not, and yeah, I was nervous around him a little bit, but it's not really just him. He put you in a room with someone even bigger than him, and then you're in front of two big people, and you're like, oh fuck. I remember being like Marcus Mumford at his house, and like I didn't work with him, but just like being there, I was like, well, this is fucking crazy. He's just here, and he has a million people working all the time. So it's yeah, I guess like there's nerves there, but I don't know. It's like it can be good to have that sometimes in the studio. I remember like the other day I had a session. He invited me to with Mark Ronson, and like it's just that one was nerve wracking because I'm like, man, but he was just so nice that it actually made me not. And obviously, at this time in my life, I'm a little less nervous because I've done it enough times. But still, it was like nice to have that. I was like, wow, this is like nerve wracking in a good way. Where I was like, I'm so excited to be in the room with someone so, legendary that it was like exciting. It kind of made me excited to be in the studio. So I think sometimes it's a good thing. You can go off of that and. Yeah, it happens to everybody, bro. I'm sure.
I'm just wondering too, just like because I think every producer can relate to this too, where to a certain extent, where they have, we call it opportunities, right? And opportunities will come and go, and some things will happen and some things won't. But like, I can think of specific times where I'd been in rooms with people that are very, very big and successful, and I'm like, okay, like this is your moment, like do a good job, right? And you do a good job, but sometimes it doesn't turn out into anything.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Oh, all the time, yeah.
Especially coming from the placement world, like you have to deal with so much rejection to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Like you work on things and you're like, this is good, and then it just fizzles out.
You gotta have hard skin.
Right. And I think it says a lot for somebody to be able to just sort of keep going to it. And then eventually you do get that point where it's like, yeah, if you're going to work on something with Diplo at this point in your level, most likely it's actually going to come out and be something.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the main reasons why placement is so hard for some people is because a lot of people are going for just the top. Like, I had a record sit, like apparently it was recorded and everything and cut and mixed, and it was like a Beyonce record, but it sat for like 4 years. And like I don't think it's ever coming out. It's not like some big deal. We're not, it's not like an NDA or anything, but it's not coming out, I don't think. So it's like if one day it comes out, cool. If not though, but like that's worse to me and more annoying than just knowing a strong no. Because then you're like, oh, cool, no. But like having being like the possibility of like maybe one of the biggest artists in the world cutting a record is more annoying. You're just sitting there like, is it ever gonna happen? Versus like if I send something over to like we're close with like Pitbull's camp and they're like, I send them stuff all the time. I'm like, oh, I think this is a good idea. Like, no, it's not for him. I'm like, cool. And now I know I'm not gonna be sitting here. Yeah. So it's like there is a really weird thing with waiting. I think as humans, it's harder to just wait and be patient, whereas like a nice strong no or yes is actually, and I'm telling you honestly, as someone that's tried with some of the biggest names, those are the most annoying. They can't afford to tell you yes or no because they don't even know. They're literally building their album. Rihanna's been building an album for almost like 8 years or something crazy. Every single person in the world has been like, yeah, I made something for her. We all have. Right. Everybody in the music industry at this point has said or sent something to Rihanna for her album. It's been 8 years. So it's
ASAP's
like,
fault, dude.
I mean,
it's ASAP's fault.
No, it's just a comment. It's like a joke, right, with writers right now, where like everyone thinks they have a Rihanna cut.
She drops it. It's like 100 songs.
Yeah.
I thought it was because she kept having babies. That's why.
No, I mean they obviously they don't want to come out and not have something great, so they keep changing styles and this and that. And I'm not like roasting any writers that. I hope you get them, guys. Right. But there's only like 20 people that are getting on this album, and it's like. At this point, I know I'm like the one I did 3 years ago probably isn't gonna make it. So it's either make new ones or right. It's just an interesting thing with the top level stuff. Where you just kind of wait around.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's podcast. We want to go ahead and take a quick second to let you guys know about our brand new pack, TEAROUT Volume 2. TEAROUT Volume 2 has over 120 serum presets from gunshot basses to long boy basses. TEAROUT Volume 2 has you completely covered. We even included 170 drop-ready bass one-shots with some of our hardest hitting drum samples to date. Make sure you guys go click that link in the description and get your copy today. Let's get back into the podcast.
Dude, so I wanted to circle back to kind of like samples and talking about finding music.
Yeah.
What are some like specific techniques for crate digging that you use to like find some really good samples? Because you honestly have like a really good ear for that. You know what I'm saying? Especially for house music. I feel like there's something there.
I think there's something about the taste that it makes you able to just use the same samples but make it work better. I don't know. It's like I almost don't know how to explain it because I feel like I'm usually on Splice like everybody else, and then maybe there's just one little piece of shit loop that I just searched in my Ableton and it popped up. Maybe that'll be the one that'll make it not just splicey. The stuff with like house, oh man, it's like one of the most because you know how you can just tell when a dubstep person makes house.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
Maybe if I'm like, when we open up the computer, it'll make more sense. Like I might be better at explaining it while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
But it took me a second, bro. And I definitely credit, playing shows and actually diving in and like listening to a Chris Lake and a Fisher set and realizing like, yo, their drums do not sound like yours.
Yeah.
Keep it really, because I remember when we first started Sidepiece, a lot of like the bass kids were like, "Oh yeah, you're a bass kid going in the house. I'm gonna do it here. Hey, what do you think of this for us in Sidepiece?" And I was like, "I love you. This doesn't sound like this. Like I don't know how you're not hearing it, but it's so far off because it's just the heaviest drums, clickiest kicks, and the hi-hats like a open acoustic ride, and it's like
Yes.
this is nobody's using that. You know what I mean? It's like it's a difficult thing to. I struggled with. I'm only saying this because I struggled with it. I was making the type of house that sounds like a bass producer made it. And it takes you just like fucking sitting there and listening and soaking it in, I guess. Soaking it in really is the biggest difference. People don't sit down and, you could say the same thing about any niche genre, like funk, like the like drift music. I actually knew about that, I'm not trying to be like a hipster, like, but I love cars.
Yeah, that's like your era.
So I love, I was like, wow, this music's kind of fucking weird, but I love drifting and I love the JDM culture and all that stuff. And I would just be on, because like I'm always flipping through cars and stuff. And I was like, yo, this type of music's crazy. Like, what is going on right now? And I started like looking into the type of music, and Diplo, obviously being him, he was super intrigued by weird genre popping up. He's like, yo, have you heard about this weird like drift music, funk? And this was like 4 years ago or 3 years, like COVID era, like for sure. Like me and him were going back and forth about how cool funk was. And we both realized like these kids don't want like recycled pop funk. They want shitty piece of crap, horribly produced funk. And like that's the only stuff that wins in that era. And like it's because it's genuine to the culture of the thing. So house is the same way. And I think a lot of good genres are the same way. Like they're genuine in themselves and how they've been produced. It's hard for people to get and change the formula, I'd say.
Yeah.
But it's not always a bad thing. It's just a bad thing when people feel like left out and they're like, oh, there's, everyone's so snobby. And it's like, well, it's just because the culture, like a lot of people in those cultures love to keep that culture, similar. And like moving on from that is difficult for a lot of people. And once you experience how house music works and moves, you're like, I get why this formula is so nice. And changing things here and there subtly. Like Chris Lake is the greatest of all time at 100%. Subtly changing house music for the better. Yeah. I think he's the Skrillex of, he pushes it forward and adds, something a little different. You're like, whoa, wasn't expecting that, but he doesn't take away from the groove and the authenticity. And like, I feel like as Sidepiece, we're always like trying to do the same thing, like push it in a safe, subtle way forward, not just like change the DNA of it.
Right.
I think that's huge to say about any genre. When you're trying to do a genre blend, you can't do it far enough left field to where it's too different. You have to change it just enough to where it's understood what you're doing, but not like directly.
It's such a hard balance, man. And going into like my Nitti metal rock / electronic, I'm in that balance too of trying to like make it right. And I'm like not stuck, but that's where I'm at. I'm
difficult.
Like, let me make this well-rounded, and it's like exactly where I'm at.
Yeah, I feel like my biggest struggle when we're mixing metal and rock with bass music is that you can't get that stuff loud enough to like get to where
I got some tricks for you.
The bass is, some L2 action.
Dad's
some
here.
L2 on there. Yeah, Daddy's
We
here.
can open up one of the. Well, I'm not gonna. I don't want to be daddy of metal. I feel like a lot of guys are doing it insanely well, probably way better than me on a larger scale. I just feel like now I finally have my effort to try and do it because I love it. So I don't want to I'm not trying to take anyone out. I just feel very confident that like the songwriting and the mixing, I'm excited to show you guys that for sure.
So one thing I noticed with Sidepiece is I think of hybrid trap and dubstep, right, as a very, very difficult genre to produce. There is a lot of technical stuff that you have to sort of know. You understand your sub bass really well, right?
Yeah.
So when Sidepiece started, and for us, we were just like sort of getting into tech house, and we are still obviously we're always learning. We got the opportunity to work with Jaws on his last 2 albums, like
nice,
with the mixing and mastering, right? But for us, it was like we always love house and we've made house, but like especially our lane that we've sort of been more exploring in the excellent side has been more like heavier bass music,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So trying to find that element of sub, I would just say the sub in tech house or just in house in general is not an easy thing. When I listen to Sidepiece, I go, oh, these guys have the ability of a dubstep / hybrid trap producers or trap producers to get that sort of sub, and it shows. And I'm very, very curious, like how your guys' process was, and we can get in this when we jump into the
for
thing.
sure.
But just really, really sort of getting, and I always attribute it to the sub, but getting into the how you guys were able to use your production knowledge to create a really nice mix master for a sort of tech house or house track. So I guess this is a long-winded statement / question.
I know exactly where you're going with it too.
All right, do you want to just do it for me? Because I feel like I'm rambling.
The question is mixing your sub with a mid-range bass line together.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Yeah,
but you do it better.
Do you separate them? Do you use the sub on the mid bass? Like,
is it analog? Like, what is your guys' secret to getting at the...
No, honestly, most of them are serum or samples. And then, yeah, I feel like I really coined I don't know if I did. I'm just saying, I remember, though, on my mind, I don't remember I don't remember hearing anyone do the separation of mid and low end thing in house music ever. I'm sure Chris Lake probably did it.
Yeah.
Or some. Yeah. There's probably people that are doing it before me, so I don't want to be like, oh, I coined it. But I remember when I made the On My Mind bass line, I did a very dubstep thing, and I put the little top mid bass layer with the doom, boom, 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 and I made it like crispier, right? Little subtle like saturation, and then I just did sub, like very subby. And I was like, this is weird. And I know I do it in dubstep, but then like it just kept working. Like we hear it live, we hear it everywhere. We're like, yo, this shit is slapping. And at that time, it was like, now you listen back and it's like not the greatest mix of house music, but like I feel like at that time it was one of the few records that like smacked, and it was like dun, 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 dun. Like you heard this bass on any speaker system, whatever. And like that was definitely one of the moments where I was like, oh, you can really mix some of the. And again, I don't know if that was the first time, so I don't want to be like, yeah, it was the first time. It might not have been, but like, I don't really know how many people were doing that stuff at that time, like 2018, I want to say, like, kind of that era where it's exactly what I tried to do was like, a lot of the taste though was like Diplo being like, no, we gotta use this different kick, and these are listen to this, and I was like, because I was using the wrong kicks, and I remember earlier versions of it weren't hitting, but the bass line though is the original bass line where I was like, sick. I tried it, it worked in every version from zero to version 17. Like the bass line was always like in 2 layers working, and then we got the drum sounding right, so it sounded proper, but it kind of slapped more, and it was like definitely one of those things where I was like, oh, maybe we can kind of like fuck around with mixing small elements of my dubstep and trap stuff into tech house. And that's why like Walker and Royce is a great example. I bet those fuckers did it before us because they're like the most legendary, like weird dubstep-y sound house guys. I'm sure Chris, like there's so many people that like been doing this longer in house music, I think. So I don't know. It's probably been done. Not a lot of people I feel like were able to mix the groove of house with the technicality of like bass stuff. It's definitely
it's not
interesting.
Easy.
Yeah, it's not easy
to get like, because you could just I'm gonna have a dedicated sub, and then I'm gonna have my mid bass that's like maybe like a little bit of the lower like mid harmonics. It's not easy to get those to blend together well in a because that's all you really have in tech house is just like the bass line, and then like I like what you said about the relationship of the drums. Like if the kick sample isn't necessarily right, the punch of the kick and the relation between that and the sub and the side chain and all those things come in to make a tech house track. I keep saying tech house, but you know what I'm saying, like
totally
to make it sound really, really, really good.
Yeah,
I still feel like there's. What's nice about what I love about like John Summit is like he's like going into like the bass world now.
Yeah.
He's getting like a little bit of flack, and then you got like you and Dylan going more into the house world, and it's like bringing each other's like experience from coming from a different sort of genre, and allowing that to sort of push the genre forward. Because now when I listen to a more modern sort of tech house track, I am noticing a difference in the sub relation and the mid bass, and I'm like, oh, this sounds a little bit this is sounding better. So I wonder if that is a direct influence of having sort of different style producers getting out of their comfort zone and exploring it like you guys did.
Well, yeah, everything like new is usually just someone taking something from somewhere else into a place it hasn't been. It's not like that thing is new, but when you put it into somewhere that's not used to, that's what makes it feel new. It's like new is just feels new. It's not actually new. So like when you have a house guy, you know, use something from dubstep, it makes that track feel new. And when you have a dubstep guy use something from metal, or, you know, it's not super new now, but like now that people are doing it more and more, it feels more new and cool in this like, you know, relationship. That's what makes it feel like new. So it's like that's probably the number one thing about mixing it well and mixing genres subtly is it makes things feel new by not just overly committing to like, oh, I just want to stay exactly as before. And some people do that, but they do it the best. And that's like a dangerous line. Like, do you want to like, you know, be the best 3-point shooter on the team and that's it? No one's replacing me. I'm a 3-point shooter. That's it. Or do you want to like try and be the LeBron James and you're like, you know what, I'm going to make the whole thing take a little bit. It's like, that's a whole nother thing in itself. But there are people that it's like, yo, you don't fuck with like in the house world, you don't fuck with like Jamie Jones and them. They are the best at mixing those 5-hour, 6-hour, 8-hour sets and Carl Cox. Like you just can't take that away. Those guys are the best at exactly what they do. Yeah. And then like us as Sidepiece, we're like, oh, we're not going to ever beat them at that game. We're going to A, try and be as genuine in house music, and B, try and bring things of our, you know, other culture of EDM-ish kind of bass music into it in such a, you know, subtle, appreciative way towards house music that it just feels a little bit new. And like I think that's the balance there. Is like you see those people that are legendary and they stick in their thing, and it's a great thing because they have earned that from years and years and years. Like you can't catch up to them. You have to be their age, and that won't be till you get to their age. Right. So it's like the only way really to cut through that, I think, is to have to subtly put your difference in.
Bring something new in. Yeah. So as somebody that has a very good, solid footing in the house genre with Sidepiece, and then also in the bass genre, my question for you is, where do you see each of those genres going to now? Like, where do you see the bass music scene? Do you think it's going to be more, you know, you're doing a lot more live instrumentation. You're trying to incorporate that. Where do you see those genres sort of trending to?
I would love for, like, I think house music is, like, easiest answer because it's just, like, it's never going to go, it's, like, going to be, like, house, you know, there's, what's that sample we've all used it before where it's like, like the house music will be here. It's been here before. It'll be here during. It'll be here after. Yeah. It will never die. Like there's this really cool vocal, and it's like it's true. Before EDM started, there was house music. When everything was happening, there was house music. When it's all dead, there will be house music. Like it just doesn't. You can't get away from danceability. It's the perfect area, perfect tempo, perfect genre to go and dance and have a good time with, you know, other human beings. There's just nothing better about that area. And there's subgenres and harder and softer and this and more tropical and more German and deep and dark, but like it just doesn't, I don't think it's going anywhere ever. Yeah. I don't see it. Popularity is a thing that, you know, Twitter analytics, you can be like, oh, it's a little more poppin' because Fisher, and then now, oh, we had On My Mind, Big Whoop. Like house music is house music, bro. We just played a tour to smaller venues and it was so fucking fun. Like we just, you know, we did a bunch of like big tours and they were great. You know, obviously we had a big song, so we were like, you know, doing bigger, you know, kind of more styled towards bass music where it's like a big show production. And then we reeled it back to kind of like reset and play these like more culture kind of house, like real fans like of house music. And it was so much fun. We had a blast. Like that like helped us like, you know, kind of refine our set, get back into the culture, like, you know, just kind of go back to where it started. We're like, man, we just love house music. Let's be with fans and people that know how house music is. And it just made me realize, like, this shit's not going anywhere. Like, if you genuinely care about it and you're not just trying to hop on a trend, house music won't die. And I actually feel the same for heavy music, bro. Kids need, like, I need an outlet for, like, aggressiveness. Like, if I don't want to be mean to other human beings, I need to let it out somewhere. And a lot of people, when people like say they can't get into like heavy music or something, I'm like, you probably take your anger out in a different way. That's not great. I'll be honest. But they say people that fight, people that listen to aggressive music, I know there's outliers and people that are pieces of shit that are in these scenes, but a lot of the best fighters, a lot of people in metal music are some of the most genuinely nice people because they have nothing, they get it out all the time. Like, I sit in the gym and I listen to like Suicide Silence talking about the most horrible shit, craziest shit, but like I don't believe in necessarily what they're saying, but like me getting it out and then I'm done the gym session, I'm like, oh, now I can go and like just relax and like, you know, go about my day. Like, I feel it's the same way. I don't think that will ever go away. Like, aggressive music, you know, trends are trends. Everything will always be there to me, like, of how you need an outlet for. You could probably say the same thing about like indie music, like whether it's bigger, you know, trending or not. There's just always a room for people to enjoy music. I don't think bass music ever will go anywhere, especially because, you know, with metal and how much people love aggressive music, it's the perfect fit for that. So it's like, I just want, personally, what I want to see you do is I just want to go do like the live version of it, but I want to do it well. Like, I just don't think I've personally seen it done. I'd say probably Illenium does it best because he actually has 3 other DJs that know how to play in a band but also be a DJ. I don't know how to explain that. Like, they do it right. No. And almost everybody else, it's like not the version that I see working. Like, I want to do it well, I guess. That's where I want to see it go.
That's not easy to do, too, because like you had mentioned before, it's like you can't just have like 50-50. Okay, the metal song all of a sudden turns into a build into a heavy drop. It's like that's like the easy like sort of method, but that's like not really incorporating them two together to create something new and fresh.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. There's like a balance. That's where I'm at. I'm kind of like going back and forth between like, oh, the intro's more rock and then the drop is the drop. And then, oh, maybe this one, you know, there's one where like I tried to start with the drop and then go to like, I'm just like experimenting with that right now. Yeah. And it's like, it's definitely interesting. Playing some of them live though, again, it kind of helped me realize which ones were working. But
so do you think you'll get like a band with you? If like, would that be like eventually where you're trying to go?
I would love to. Yeah,
players?
I think even like a small, like just like 2 other guys with me up there, I think would probably do it.
Live drummer for sure.
Yeah, drumming. I mean, the thing is, it sucks because like also like I don't know what, like I can play those instruments too, and like on the record I play the instruments that I wrote too. So it's like I'm trying to figure out like which one do I want to do, or like should I don't want to necessarily be like the one-man band jump around. Like sometimes that's like not. There's something about a feeling of everyone in a band where when you see the like jump around, touch a little cymbal, jump around and do a loop. Like, it doesn't remind me of like, and some of those people are insane. Like Mark Rebele and all those guys, like he's in that lane and he does it well. But I'm talking about why a metal band works is like, because you guys have been playing in bands, right? Yeah. So like, you know that chemistry when you're up there and you guys are all like in the zone, you're like, yo, this is something different about all of us locked in. The feeling of a full band up there with chemistry, that's hard to come by, and I feel like that's kind of one of the things I'm going for.
Which is actually super exciting that you're seeing right now. I think is an interesting time in the electronic scene because you're seeing a blend of a lot of country music sort of coming in too. The whole country EDM scene is happening, and then country's also blending with modern pop music, and then you got guys like MGK who are bringing forward back this sort of like emo sort of vibe that we all kind of grew up with. Yeah. So I do think that rock is sort of coming back in a way. It's been dead for a bit, and I do see the genre or the influence of actual instrumentation sort of coming into electronic music. And I think it's desperately needed for some of the genres that are just sort of rinse and repeat, you know? So I'm super excited to see that. And especially for us coming from that world, we're like, dude, this is what we do. Like we can, you know, we were writing a song the other day and it was like, oh, let me just do out this little here's a guitar part that I wrote. Oh, it's so much easier to do that if you grew up playing an instrument.
Yeah, absolutely.
Than it is to like sit there and be like, okay, like I just got one chord on my, I got one MIDI chord.
And the next chord,
it takes forever, you know what I mean? So I think that's super exciting. I have a question for you too, just on sort of the same sort of topic. Is you kind of mentioned this, but you've already worked with a lot of really, really big artists and producers. Right now, do you have any sort of dream collabs that you're like, oh, I really hope like one day that I could really work with this person? Are there a couple people? I'm sure people at home would be interested on what that would be.
Yeah, I mean, one of the top people on my list still to this day would be to do something with, like, Chris Martin or, like, Coldplay.
Yeah.
Which sucks because they're kind of, like, they don't need anybody because they're actually that good at writing and a lot of stuff like that. That's why it's, like, so rare. But, I mean, it would just be incredible because I love the band. I think as far as, like, sometimes it's interesting. I don't have this like long list of people I want to work with because I love just like it just happens. I don't always. I'm such a non-controlling, I guess, with my destiny or whatever, my life. Like most of the time, I'm not overly like thinking about what to do next or what's gonna happen next. I love when it just surprises me and I'm just like, oh, I got a record with Kodak Black and Ko Wetzel, like this country record I did with Diplo for his last album, and it was like, oh, that's sick. I didn't. Kodak Black wasn't on my Monopoly card or whatever. Like it just was like pull pass go, like, oh, Kodak Black, there it is, and it was just interesting. So it's like I don't really always think about it, just naturally there's just been so many cool ones because all the people I really like, my small list of people is like I just want to work with like Take Mac Sunday and like since, a bunch of like small emo bands, or like bro, I literally DM like a different like Midwest emo band every other. I'm like, yo, you guys are so fire. Just like they do this crazy guitar riffs and all those like RJ Passin, like I hit him up all the time. Like I did a record with him. He's like, dude, this loop is so crazy. Can I use this? He's like, yeah, go ahead, bro. And it's like that's usually how I hit up, just like the fucking random little like. Like not little, he has 10 times more followers, but you get what I'm saying, like just more of like a homie vibe than just like these big artists, because like honestly most of the time you can't get into that stuff just like how you think, especially not in a cool relationshipy way. It's usually just like an A&R or someone lying that they're their manager, and it's like I kind of stop. I guess what it is, I've had so much experience with it not ever working, I stopped thinking like that, and I just think about what I want to do, like what I like to do and what's feasible, because a lot of the bigger artist stuff is just you don't fucking know, like you literally have to be homies with them or get an in, or Pitbull sent it to Enrique but I never met Enrique, or Diplo sent it to Bad Bunny, I never met Bad Bunny, And,
that's huge for a lot of the listeners, man, because people don't know how to do
that. Bro, like
no,
literally it's my Grammy nominations, and 90% of the I've worked with J Balvin, Pitbull, like all these guys in Latin, I've only met like Pitbull. Out of the 4 or 5 placements, never met Bad Bunny, never met Enrique Iglesias. I think I met J Balvin at the Grammys, and I was like, yo, I did guitar in this song. Nice to meet you. And he was like, oh, good, thanks, bro. And he was super nice, but that was it.
Wow.
I wasn't, stuff like that, where it's like, you don't really, that's the one thing about the placement game is like, and this is a funny story. I don't mean this to like put down on the record because I'm so proud of producing for Bad Bunny, but this just goes to show how little it can help if the alignment isn't right. So I'm a random white dude, and I made a Latin trap song, and my name, and nobody really, you won't even remember this. Like nobody realizes my name was physically on Spotify. It was Bad Bunny, Diplo, Nitty Gritty for 3 years.
Wow.
And everyone's like, yeah, you must be so. I tell people that like, oh, he must have gotten so many followers, so many, because it was like his biggest, when he had Drake on the album, blah blah. Bro, nobody noticed.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure nobody even realizes that, but that's how the alignment stuff matters more than just like, yeah, it's cool. But like, I had literally had my name on a Spotify song it was an accident. Like their lawyers just messed up. I was supposed to be just a producer.
Right.
And they put me on the
sick,
title.
though.
Yeah, it's sick, but it's like, it just goes to show how much it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
As a producer, like it's not everything. Just getting a placement and thing, like building a career as an artist is so different as building a career as a producer. That gets you in the rooms to produce for other people, but it's not like you just become this like celebrity artist and now everyone's booking you. They're like, you're the loser that no one knows on the song.
Yeah.
Cool, we don't care. You know, it's like that's how it works. So it's like it's interesting not to put all your eggs in one basket with like even artistry. Sometimes you can be an artist and you're touring, but then your Spotify numbers aren't good, or vice versa. Your Spotify numbers aren't good, but you're selling a lot of tickets. And the way that this shit works is so like the alignment really matters. Of like, if I was a Latin artist and then I was on that song and then I put a Latin song out, it would have worked.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like I'm trying to, now after learning all those things, I've been like, oh, I want to align with what is Nitti doing? I'm doing my rock and my metal. So I'm aligning with, the guys from Under Oath and, Bring Me the Horizon and things like that. And all these guys that make content about metal and thing. And I started realizing like, oh, okay, here's the difference. Because I was aligning with so much stuff because I was producing everything.
You're right.
But they weren't aligning like with my like area. And that's why on my mind, because it was like, oh, it aligns with house music. Sidepiece aligns with house music. So it's like it really matters, I guess, as a producer to really settle into, I've done a lot of cool things. Not all of them have aligned. And that they both matter. Not everything has to align. I'm glad I have a random diamond plaque of Bad Bunny in my house. Like, it's super sick. I love the accomplishment. It won me my first Grammy. and that's what it is. It lives there. It doesn't have to be any more than that. I'm not like a famous Latin artist because of it. So, it's just realistic expectations, I guess.
Yeah, it's amazing that you say that out loud, because I know so many people that fight for their name to be before the collab's name.
Yeah.
And they're fighting for the order in which it comes out.
Yeah.
And it's like, that doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It matters maybe a little bit, but like, it's not going to help that much. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's really cool that you talk about being aligned with the project. And
because that'll do more for your career at the end of the day. If it's like, if we were second with Diplo, and then it was a side piece, but like it didn't, like you said, it didn't really matter just because the alignment made sense. We made a house group, made a house song, everything worked with it. It wasn't like, I've been on like each side of these, aligned or not aligned, and I've just like realized like sometimes people are like, yeah, but I did this thing and it went viral. I'm like, okay, so you went viral, but like it doesn't align with, I've had a bunch of shit go like I've had shit go viral with my girlfriend where I'm like, we're in Vegas and I'm like handing her her sandals, and it's like people think one little viral like oh I'm a famous artist, tour book me. I'm like, first of all, it's a comedy thing. It has nothing to do with music. Like that doesn't help. People get confused with virality and things where I'm like, like I'm telling you, as like one of the first people to go viral on TikTok as a producer, it did nothing in the beginning because I was making like Walgreens edits. Like I had this, I remember the first like maybe I don't want to be like, oh, it's the first, but I remember one of the first ones ever that everybody asked me. I made this like Walgreens thing, and it went like super viral. Like I got like 100,000 followers in like one day. I was like one of the first like people on TikTok, and then I remember like Wookie was like, yo, how did you go viral on Diplo was like, yo, help me, like how did you do TikTok? And I was like, I don't know, I just fucking did it. I don't know what I did. Like I literally just did it, and it
popped off,
and it just went crazy, and but it didn't ever again. That was another one where it didn't ever align. And then now that I had my other things that aligned, like the Linkin Park Numb remix that I did, or like I'm about to drop this Slipknot Duality remix, and it got me followers and people excited at shows, and now I have clips of it. And I was like, oh, like here's the difference of aligning my virality with what I'm doing and not just being viral to go viral. Like I'm so over, like it sucks because I'm one of those people that like, Wookie's really good at, Eliminate's really like I feel like all of us, if we wanted to go viral tomorrow, like we could just make a couple funny videos and probably one of them would. But it's almost useless at this point unless it goes with what you're going. And those are two great examples of Wookie fucking went perfectly in his lane with it. Eliminate goes perfectly in his lane with his streaming and all that stuff, and it goes perfect. And I was like, and I had to learn from them too, because I was one like, I feel like there was this group of us that were like, oh, we keep going viral, and I kept like not aligning with my virality, and I was like, fuck, let me change. I was like, what do I actually want to align with? And I was like, oh, I love rock and metal, and then I was like, oh, I get it. Like, you know what I mean? It really clicked for me on the difference between alignment of like virality and things like that. Because like you guys too, I'm sure you have like a lot of viral clips of production things all the time, but it probably helps either A, sell more samples or tutorials or more things because it aligns with what you guys do. So it's like, as a content creator with producers, I always warn people, I'm like, don't just go viral with like your girlfriend or your dog.
Yeah.
Although you can do that, make sure like everything aligns with what you're trying to do. Like don't go viral with an millennium sound if you're trying to be sudden death.
That's not going to help unless they build their own platform. You know what I mean? It's like so important for people to understand that like the way that you get the actual big collabs, whether it be working with people, is by having something that is attractive, having your own platform.
Desirable.
You know what I mean? And then that alone sometimes isn't even enough for you to just, it doesn't happen. It's so rare that somebody gets like a dream sort of collab and it just like throws them into like the stratosphere of success. You know what I mean?
Or if it does look like that, there's usually a Titanic glacier underneath of it, and then you're only seeing the little tip of the iceberg. But
I think that's really important for people to
and again, I'm speaking from I'm sure you guys are too. I'm speaking from personal experience that like I made those mistakes personally. Like even me, if to somebody that might, I'm not the biggest producer in the world, but if somebody feels that I'm a bigger producer than them and they're struggling at this point, I'm telling you straight up, like I definitely struggled all the time with those things of like not being aligned and not, making the right content and just doing it because we follow likes and comments and engagement and stuff. And it's like this really twisted, mindset of, just come back down to earth for a second and realize like it has to really come from you and be genuine. There's a lot of factors, but that really is one of the key ones. Just like following you could just tell nowadays. Like you can just tell. Like I can go back in my posts that look like whack and be like, wow, that was whack from me. I could do it to myself. So I'll just go on. I'll pick on myself as an example. But it's like I've definitely made those posts, those random remixes sometimes where I look back and be like, you know, I want to be much more like genuine about this stuff because, you know, I've seen enough success to realize like, yeah, it's great. You want to ride that high when you get it, but you know, sometimes it's not worth the sacrifice of you being a genuine artist, and that will actually pay off more. And I'm realizing that what's crazy is like it pays off more to really stick to that because you're just playing a game with yourself eventually, where it's like you end up having to fake it. That leads to like mental health issues and trying to like, you know, it's hard to be consistent. It's really hard to be consistent when it's something that's not genuine. That's what I'll say. I can do it. I force myself to do a lot of things, and you know, it's good. You need to force yourself to be healthy, and you need to like try hard to lose weight sometimes, or try hard to work on your mental health. So it's like you do have to try to do things, but sometimes forcing it is obvious. And I see a lot of people. I did it myself. Is why I notice when other people do it. I'm like, that post or that thing just feels like it just doesn't feel good. I don't know how to explain it other than that, but I did it with myself, so I'm mainly talking about myself, and it's like, it's probably the best example. Is like, you can just go back and see when people make posts and do things that are genuine to themselves, and you can usually see a pivot on people's career when they start doing that.
How can like for producers at home, let's say like they look at you as like somebody that they're like, man, I really love what he's doing, and I really, really want to be in a place where he's at, or I would love to work with him one day. What advice would you give to them to be able to accomplish those types of goals, you know?
I think the best way off rip that, again, I can really only talk from personal experience, is either that person that you're talking about, look up to, or want to work with hits you up, or you have enough, like you guys said, kind of going on that's attractive enough to then message them and they actually answer. And I can think of multiple times where I've shoot my shot at the wrong moment, and when I've shot my shot at the right moment.
Yeah.
And you usually know. I don't know how to explain it, but like I'm sure you guys know when you DM, whoever at the right moment, you're like, they're gonna answer. I'm confident.
Yeah.
You know, and before you were like, oh, I hope they'd answer.
Yeah.
Because they're not. If you
Right.
think that, they're not gonna answer. Like, trust me, you have to really be excited to, I got my shit straight. I'm going to DM them and see what happens. And there's still a 50-50 chance there, but usually you know if they're going to answer or not. And, like, that's happened to me with, like, I remember, like, the first time I emailed, like, Diplo, it was, like, I got some, like, shitty email, but I sent him the Lights remix, which is, like, one of my first, like, things back in the day that, like, everybody was playing. And I already knew that song was, like, going to do some good stuff for me. So I just sent him that one, and I was, like, actually confident that it was going to work. And it worked. And he just answered me. He's like, oh, this is dope. Send me more. So,
That's awesome.
Just kept going on like that. And then vice versa. Sometimes I remember, like, I think Hero Bus, like, DM me once on SoundCloud. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like, he actually asked me for something. But it's because I had released 3 songs. And they were all,
You had stuff going on.
Working, I guess. I'm not going to say they're that good because they're pretty old and shitty now. But at the time, they were pretty good. And, like, that's really what it was. It wasn't, I think a lot of people are impatient. I've been there where you're, like, you want it so badly that you feel you're closer to it than you are.
Yeah.
But just because you want it really badly doesn't mean that you're there. So I'd say, like, the key really is that patience of, like, I'm ready to shoot my shot, or I'm, at a level that they'll shoot their shot at me. Like, that's really the only 2 ways I see it happening to work with people.
Yeah.
Nice. So I really want to transition into the production segment, but I have one more career advice question for you.
Sure.
This comes up all the time: quantity versus quality.
Ooh.
What do you think about that? Do you think quantity is more important than quality, or is it a combination of both?
I think the best metaphor I can give for this is, like, kind of how I tried to, like, exercise and stay healthy is I don't actually do the same workout every day, right? Most people, at least me, I try to just, like, I'm not, like, super ripped or anything. I just try and be, and, like, enjoy my fitness and enjoy my health. So if one day I feel like going on a hike, I'm going to do the hike. But if one day I'm going to do push-ups and pull-ups, I'm going to do push-ups and pull-ups. It's the same thing with quantity versus quality. If you feel like you need to spend one whole day on a song and focus on the quality, one day, 1 week, do it if it feels right. If you feel like, yo, I need to make 3 ideas because the first 2 sucked, do that. Like, your body or your mind usually speaks to you. And, you know, if you're open enough, I really think people ignore, I don't know what the, I guess, like, correct term, but, like, your gut feeling, you know? Like, people ignore that a lot.
Sure.
And maybe, I'm sure I grew up in the church. You guys did too. Like, I actually, ironically, there's 2 sides. People grow up the church and they go completely the other way.
Mm-hmm.
I actually didn't really pay attention to it. And then I got older. I was like, whoa, to me, God is very real. I firmly believe in it. And I believe in him talking to me. I believe in prayer. I believe in a lot of things. So I try to open up my, like, you know, gut feeling would be the, like, kind of secular term for it. But, like, that little voice inside of us, like, to me, like, I really pay attention to that all the time. And it usually tells, you know, it doesn't always work. We're human, but most of the time I've had success on something, it's because I was like, oh, I need to make this song. I feel like it's a good idea, or this just isn't working today. I'm not going to do this today.
Yeah.
And that to me is the best indicator of how you should do a lot of
Not
little ideas.
Yeah.
Just
Don't
really
force it.
I think there's a moment to fight for something. If, like, I do think people sometimes we get into a habit of, like, so that direction. There's a balance to everything. Like, oh, don't fight it, and then you end up getting nothing done because they're like, I don't fight anything. I'm like, no, now you're just, like, not trying hard enough. And there's a balance between fight enough that you try to get this idea out, but if you really are, like, it's so bad and you're fighting it too hard, then that's your sign. But there's a perfect fine. I feel like you guys probably experience this as producers, where you're like, sometimes you do have to work a little harder to get the kick and the bass line right for a house song.
Yeah.
And then it's right. I remember, like, I don't think it always comes out. When people are like, oh, yeah, if it doesn't come to me the first 5 minutes, I don't think that's always true. It's true a lot of the time, but I've fought for some bass line. I remember we were going back and forth about on my mind, is this the right bass line? And I was like, it's the right bass line, guys. Like, I'm fighting you on this. And I remember we talked, like, not fought, but, like, we tried other bass lines. I was like, the OG's the best. OG's the best. This is the best bass line. Trust me.
Yeah.
And, like, I feel like that was my gut feeling telling me that. So it can kind of go both ways, but, man, open yourself up. I really think people close themselves off to, like, I think it's like a TED Talk where they're like, a genius was, like, originally, like, a Greek spirit, or I'm probably saying this horribly, but, like, the overall picture is that when you get something, you're receiving it and it just passes through you. You're not like, you're, like, kind of channeling that idea. There's ideas everywhere. They're out there. You just got to channel them. So if you're channeling those right ideas, like, that's why it helps to not, like, it makes it really easy not to be arrogant if you realize this shit just flow. Like,
you're just a
you
vessel.
could get this. Yeah, that's it.
So what are some good techniques to kind of open up that channel for you creatively?
I'd say,
do
like,
you do anything specific?
No, I just try, and I still. What's crazy is, bro, I try so hard to do the right stuff, and I still struggle with it all the time. Like, I spent the last 2 days, like, I'm being completely honest with this, is to show, like, that any level producer goes through. Like, I literally spent the last 2 days, like, playing Call of Duty, because I was like, and I could have been. I did a little bit. I won't say, like, the whole days. Like, I worked on, like, 2 or 3 ideas, but, like, they weren't flowing. So it was like,
you didn't force it.
I felt like I had to, like, you know, and I just had a really not rough, but I had, like, a long week of touring. They were incredible, sold out shows, so I'm not complaining, but I was tired as fuck. I was like, oh, man, I need to, like, take a break. And I, like, look back, and I'm like, you know, I'm not mad at that. But then there's some days I get home and I, like, sit in the studio for 2 days straight and I knock out good shit, and I'm excited. Right. So I'm just trying to paint a realistic picture that's not all, you know, butterflies and rainbows, and Instagram paints the perfect story of, like, Grammy-nominated producer and I'm always on. I'm not always on, and it's just like, you know, I kind of forget what the question is, but I'm just trying to paint a realistic
I feel like
picture.
It's very important to have, like, to not be guilty about having your free time, your recharging time.
Yeah, refilling that tank.
Buying the watch.
That's right.
That's the metaphor for this, bro. Like, and what's funny is, like, this was actually a gift from my girlfriend, so I didn't even buy it technically. But the funny story, just to, like, wrap, this is a great way to wrap it up since she started with it. Yeah. I told my girlfriend, I was like, oh, I found this Tissot. It's like, has the fluted bezel, and I was learning about my watch. I'm like, ooh, fluted bezel, you know, so excited. And then she ends up buying it, and I bought it too. So I didn't know she bought it. So 2 of them are on their way to the house, and I'm like, yeah, I just bought it. She's like, babe, why'd you buy it? I bought it for you. It's right here. And I was like, oh my God, it's here. Like, and then I just canceled my order. So I was like, isn't it funny? Like, it's another, like, I guess for me, a God thing. I don't want to make it over spiritually for you guys. But,
no, you can totally do whatever.
No, you can't.
It's just funny how, like, we ask for something, and then I was forcing it, and I credit God to it, but again, whatever, gave it to me. Like it gave it to me. I literally my girlfriend bought it for me, and gave it to me faster than when I decided I'm gonna force it and give it to myself.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? You know, it's
you trust that inner voice, and you let things happen, and if you're not feeling like an idea is flowing, rather than banging your head against the wall for 2 days straight, you're going to play Call of Duty and let that inspirational tank fill up.
Yes.
Like, that's great advice, man.
I love that, man.